Washington is recognized.
Well, I'd like to thank the gentleman from Colorado for yielding me some time this afternoon. I rise in strong support of the H.R. 3281, the Reclamation, Title Transfer, and Non-Federal Infrastructure Incentivization Act, which is offered by my friend from Colorado, Chairman Lamborn. This legislation brings common sense streamlining efforts to the Bureau of Reclamation to transfer federal water projects to local water entities like irrigation districts and local water user associations. Reclamation, or BOR, is the nation's largest wholesale water supplier, providing 1 out of 5 Western farmers with irrigation water for over 10 million farmland acres that produce 60% of the nation's vegetables and 1/4 of its fresh fruit crops. These projects and water districts are vital to my district in Central Washington, where we grow over 300 different crops, including the iconic Washington apple. Hopefully you've enjoyed some of those, or Washington cherries, potatoes, and 3/4 of the nation's hop production. Reclamation's assets in Washington include 16 dams, 3 hydropower stations, 4 major water projects, and miles of canals which deliver water to the end users. There are currently 2 water districts in Central Washington seeking title to sections of federal water projects: the Kennewick Irrigation District, the KID, and the Greater Wenatchee Irrigation District, both of which for many years have managed and maintained these important water delivery systems. Now, this legislation would provide a streamlined process to transfer reclamation facilities to those local entities, which includes a number of benefits for the water users, but also a number of benefits to the federal government. This streamlined process can reduce regulatory burden at the local, the state, and federal levels by cutting unnecessary paperwork and reducing staff time at all levels of government. Additionally, through this process, local districts can take full control of these projects, which they already maintain and manage. By authorizing this streamlining process, local districts can leverage private financing through their ownership, which further reduces the federal government's spending and backlog of repairing and upgrading these projects. Mr. Speaker, this legislation provides a win-win solution for the federal government and for the water users. These projects have been in place for many years, but Reclamation has been inundated and overwhelmed by some of the needs for a growing population and for water users. Local communities need this support. Mr. Speaker, I was speaking with some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle just yesterday about this legislation, and they shared with me that they were worried that this was simply the privatization of federal water projects and properties within Reclamation. But this is just not the case. This legislation simply allows the Department of Interior to convey certain projects or facilities to these local entities like irrigation districts, Indian tribes, or state and local municipalities. This has nothing to do with selling off water assets to corporations. Additionally, the entity receiving the assets must use them for the same purposes as intended by Reclamation. The transfer cannot have a significant effect on the environment, and the receiving entity must agree to provide the federal government with the equivalent present value of any repayment obligations. Mr. Speaker, this legislation streamlines water uses for local communities while reducing government waste and burdensome regulations. It's simply a win-win for the American people, and I look forward to voting in support of this legislation. I encourage all of my colleagues to do the same. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
The gentleman from Washington yields back. The gentleman from Colorado reserves, and the gentleman from California is recognized.